You didn't land on this message by coincidence. Something within you, quiet, powerful, unrelenting, guided you here. Maybe it was a lingering question in your heart, a recent moment of deep reflection, or a strange feeling that something was shifting in your world. But now that you're here, something greater is unfolding. You're standing at the edge of change, even if you can't quite see it yet. And by the time you finish listening, the reason will be clearer than ever before. Comment. I feel the shift below if you already sense something awakening inside you. Perhaps lately, life has felt like it's spiraling, a blur of unexpected challenges, confusion, or waves of emotional exhaustion. You might be asking yourself, why now? Why all at once? But what if I told you that this isn't random? What if I told you that the very chaos surrounding you is actually confirmation? Confirmation that you're on the brink of something magnificent. Because when your world starts to feel unfamiliar and unstable, it's not always a sign of falling apart. Sometimes it's the first sign of alignment. Most people miss the signs. They hear the whispers but ignore them. They experience loss, change, or heartbreak, and label it as failure or misfortune. But those who are paying attention, those with awakened hearts like yours, begin to realize these moments are sacred. They are invitations, not punishments. They are the universe's way of saying, get ready. Before every major transformation, there is a tremor, a signal, a stirring, and that stirring is happening in you now. Let's begin this journey with the first sign, the undeniable urge to question everything you once accepted as truth. Lately, you may have found yourself doubting the life you've built, the values you've held, or the path you've been following. You might catch yourself staring into space, wondering if there's more to all of this, more to you. That's not confusion, that's awakening. That's your soul signaling that something deeper is trying to emerge. The ground beneath you may feel unstable as old beliefs begin to crumble. Certainties vanish. What once felt solid now feels hollow. But don't mistake this for failure. This isn't destruction, it's revelation. You are being gently but unmistakably asked to release the outdated parts of yourself, to let go of inherited truths, borrowed dreams, and the expectations that no longer honor your spirit. This unraveling is sacred. It's not the end, it's the clearing before rebirth. And as unsettling as this process may be, it's the exact preparation your soul needs. You're being softened, opened, stretched, made ready for the truth that wants to bloom through you. These questions you're asking, they're not signs of weakness. They are spiritual doorways. And once you pass through, nothing will ever look the same again. The world is not falling apart. Your illusions are. And beneath them, the truth of who you really are is waiting to rise. Everything around you might look the same on the outside, the same rooms, the same people, the same daily rituals, but something inside you has shifted. You've started looking at life with a different lens, as though your inner vision has sharpened. What once felt right now feels restrictive. What once inspired you now feels empty. This isn't just a passing mood. It's a soul-deep signal that your inner world is evolving faster than the outer world can keep up. And as that evolution unfolds, a quiet sense of detachment begins to bloom. The hobbies that once lit you up no longer feel satisfying. The conversations you used to enjoy feel surface level. You may even feel like a stranger in the spaces that once felt like home. This is not something to fear. It's your soul shedding layers of identity that were tied to a version of yourself you've already outgrown. You're not losing connection. You're clearing space. This isn't about erasing the past or rejecting where you came from. It's about honoring the growth that's taken place inside you. It's about recognizing that some experiences, some people, even some dreams, have served their purpose. They were teachers. They were stepping stones. And now, you're being called to release them, so you can step into what's next. It's a sacred shedding, even if it feels like loss. Letting go isn't easy. Even when we know something no longer fits, we still hesitate. We cling to comfort, even if it's laced with pain. But every time you release what no longer resonates, you make space for something more aligned to enter. Think of it like clearing out an old garden, pulling weeds, removing what's dead, so that new life can take root. The disconnection you feel is the first step of reconnection to your truth. And yes, the in-between space, the space between what was and what will be, can feel lonely. You may feel unanchored, unsure of who you are, without the roles or relationships you've outgrown. But in this emptiness lies sacred potential. It's the space where transformation happens. It's the moment just before the sunrise, when everything is still, quiet, and full of promise. The life you're stepping into requires a lighter soul. That's why you're shedding so much. So, if you're noticing this disconnection from places, people, or even your old self, trust that it's not regression. It's redirection. You are being prepared for a new version of your life that resonates with who you are becoming, not who you were. Let this be your reminder. What feels like falling apart is actually your soul falling into alignment. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are becoming. Have you noticed yourself suddenly reevaluating the things you once considered important? The goals that once drove you, the status, the approval, the achievements, now seem less meaningful. It's like your soul is whispering, there's more than this. And no matter how hard you try to care about the things that once mattered so much, you just can't fake the enthusiasm anymore. That's not failure. That's clarity arriving. You're starting to see through the illusions, the layers of conditioning that taught you to chase validation instead of purpose. What once felt like a finish line now feels like a distraction. You're no longer interested in proving yourself. You're yearning for something real, something that aligns with your inner truth. This quiet shift in priorities is not accidental. It's your soul realigning you with what you were always meant to pursue. And though this kind of shift can be disorienting, it's also a profound awakening. You're beginning to understand that success isn't about appearances, it's about fulfillment. It's about joy that feels true in your bones, not applause from the crowd. And so you find yourself asking questions you never dared to ask before. Am I living the life I truly want, or am I living the life I was taught to want? These aren't simple questions. They stir something deep within you. They challenge the stories you've lived by, the expectations you've carried, the roles you've played to feel accepted. And yet, beneath the discomfort of questioning, there's a soft, persistent voice urging you to keep going. That voice is your intuition. It's your soul trying to get your attention, trying to lead you away from the noise and toward your own sacred rhythm. This moment of redefinition is a gift. It allows you to separate what's real from what's performative. You begin to notice what genuinely fills you up versus what drains you. You start to care less about how things look and more about how they feel. And that in itself is transformation, because once you start living from the inside out, your whole reality begins to shift. Not overnight, but steadily, authentically, irrevocably. So if you're feeling this pull to question your goals, your priorities, or even your definition of success, trust it. It means you're waking up. It means you're ready to live a life that's not based on obligation, but on purpose. And the more you allow yourself to question, the closer you'll get to answers that truly belong to you. You're not losing your drive. You're rediscovering what's worth driving toward. One of the clearest signs that you're on the edge of transformation is that your inner voice begins to grow louder. Not in volume, but in clarity. It's that quiet sense of knowing that can't be explained. A pull, a pause, a gentle whisper within. You may find yourself sensing things before they happen, feeling when something is off without any proof, or being drawn toward a certain decision, even when logic says otherwise. That's your intuition waking up, guiding you toward alignment. This new connection to your inner guidance can feel almost magical. It's like discovering a compass you didn't know you had. And once you begin to listen to it, truly listen, everything starts to shift. You make choices more confidently. You speak more truthfully. You move through the world with more grace. The uncertainty that once made you anxious begins to feel like an open doorway, not a threat, because deep down, you trust that you're being led. The more you follow this inner guidance, the more you'll notice synchronicities unfolding around you. Conversations that arrive just when you need them. Opportunities that come out of nowhere. Messages hidden in songs, books, or even strangers' words. These aren't coincidences, they're confirmations. They're reminders from the universe that you're not wandering aimlessly. You're on a divine path, even if you don't fully understand where it's headed yet. But trusting your intuition takes courage. It often asks you to leap before you can see where you'll land. It challenges you to go beyond reason, beyond fear, beyond the need to control every outcome. And in that leap, in that surrender, you reclaim something profound. Your faith in yourself. You begin to realize that your soul has always known the way. It's just that the noise of the world made it hard to hear. This inner trust creates a new foundation for how you live. You no longer need endless validation or constant proof to move forward. You rely on your own sense of knowing. And with that shift, your energy changes. You begin to attract situations, people, and experiences that reflect the truth of who you're becoming, not who you've been pretending to be. That's the beauty of aligning with your intuition. It connects you to everything that is truly meant for you. So if you've started feeling more drawn to silence, to solitude, to moments where you can simply breathe and listen, honor that. That stillness is not emptiness. It's sacred space. It's the place where your inner guidance gets stronger. Don't rush it. Don't doubt it. Just allow it. Because once you start living in tune with your own rhythm, you'll never again feel lost in the noise of the world. As you continue this journey inward, something else begins to rise within you. A hunger to grow, to stretch, to become. It's not the kind of growth that comes from ambition or pressure. It's something deeper, a quiet yet persistent longing to evolve into a more powerful, authentic version of yourself. You're no longer satisfied with just surviving. You want to thrive. You want to break past the limits you once accepted as normal. This inner desire begins to show up in how you spend your time. Maybe you've found yourself drawn to books, teachings, or conversations that challenge your old ways of thinking. Maybe you're discovering new interests, or feeling a strong pull toward healing old wounds you used to avoid. It's as if your soul has decided that now is the time to awaken, to rise, to become more whole, and the universe is meeting you halfway, sending you the exact tools and teachers you need. This kind of growth can feel both exhilarating and exhausting. You're simultaneously shedding and expanding, letting go of what no longer fits while reaching for what's still undefined. You might feel a rush of inspiration followed by waves of doubt. That's normal. Growth is rarely linear. It comes in waves. But each wave carries you closer to your truth. And with every stretch, you feel yourself becoming more alive, more aware, more empowered. You'll notice that your definition of growth is changing too. It's no longer about just getting more done or achieving more on paper. It's about depth. It's about honesty. It's about becoming emotionally and spiritually free. You're drawn not to the loudest voices, but to the most grounded ones. Not to the spotlight, but to the spaces that feel sacred. You want growth that feels real, the kind that brings peace to your mind and fire to your spirit. And in this space, old limitations begin to crumble. The beliefs that told you who you could and couldn't be, what you could and couldn't do, they begin to dissolve. You start asking questions you once avoided. Who am I beneath the roles I've played? What do I want? Not to please others, but to fulfill my soul. These questions aren't distractions. They are catalysts. They are the very doorway to the next chapter of your life. So if you're feeling that deep desire to grow, spiritually, emotionally, even creatively, know that it's not a phase. It's a call. A call to remember who you are, to rebuild yourself from the inside out, and to live a life that reflects your highest truth. You don't need to have all the answers yet. You just need to stay open, stay willing, and keep listening. Because the version of you that's emerging, she's been waiting for this moment all along. This journey of transformation doesn't just invite you to grow, it asks you to heal. And healing isn't always soft. Sometimes it feels like cracking open, like light pouring into places you've long kept hidden. You may find old wounds surfacing, memories you thought you'd buried rising again. But don't mistake this as regression. It's not a setback. It's your soul making space for freedom. Because what's coming next cannot grow in soil that's still tangled in pain. You begin to see your past through a new lens, not as a chain, but as a classroom. You stop blaming yourself for what you didn't know then. You stop clinging to stories that made you feel small. Instead, you begin to forgive, not just others, but yourself. You release the shame, the guilt, the fear that's kept your spirit heavy. And in that release, you begin to reclaim parts of yourself you'd long abandoned. Healing is not about erasing what happened. It's about integrating the lessons. It's about becoming whole, not perfect. You may find yourself crying more often, or sitting in stillness longer than usual. These are not signs of weakness. They're signs of deep, sacred transformation. You're peeling back layers that no longer serve you. You're allowing truth to rise. And that truth is setting you free piece by piece. In this space, something else awakens. Compassion. Not just for others, but for the younger version of you, who did the best she could. The one who survived when she didn't know how to thrive. The one who kept going, even when the world didn't understand her pain. You begin to hold her with tenderness, not judgment. You begin to honor her journey, knowing that without her, you wouldn't be here now, rising, awakening, healing. And as you heal, your life begins to mirror that inner shift. Your choices change. Your boundaries become clearer. You no longer tolerate what once stole your peace. You speak softer to yourself. You walk away from what drains you. You show up for yourself in ways you once hoped others would, because you've realized that healing isn't a destination. It's a devotion, a daily return to your own heart. So, if you find yourself in the middle of deep emotional shifts, feeling raw or vulnerable, don't rush the process. Let it be messy. Let it be honest. The discomfort you feel isn't a sign you're breaking down, it's proof you're breaking through. You're not just healing old pain. You're laying the foundation for a future built on truth, courage, and self-love. And when the dust settles, you'll see it clearly. The person you're becoming is worth everything it took to get here. There comes a moment in every transformation when you realize peace is no longer optional. It's essential. And with that realization comes a deep, sometimes painful awareness of what's been robbing you of it. You start to notice the relationships that feel heavy, the situations that feel like cycles, the connections that require you to dim your light just to keep the peace. And something inside you whispers, no more. What once felt normal now feels toxic. The things you used to excuse, you can no longer tolerate. You see more clearly. You feel more deeply. And you begin to understand that certain patterns, certain people, even certain environments, are not meant to walk with you into the next chapter of your life. They were part of your story, but not your destiny. And in this clarity, a powerful shift occurs. You begin choosing yourself. This isn't about judgment. It's about truth. It's about recognizing that your energy, your heart, your presence, they are sacred. and not everyone is meant to have access to them. You stop giving your time to things that leave you feeling empty. You stop over-explaining your boundaries. You stop sacrificing your peace for the comfort of others. Because you've finally realized you're allowed to walk away from what harms your soul. And yes, letting go can feel like grief. Even when you know it's right, your heart may ache. You may miss the comfort, the history, the familiarity. But you also know, deep in your spirit, that clinging to what no longer fits is a form of self-abandonment. And you've come too far for that. You've grown too much to keep shrinking for spaces that can't see the fullness of who you are. As you release the toxic, something sacred begins to rise. You start attracting peace instead of pain, clarity instead of confusion, nourishment instead of depletion, and with each aligned connection, your spirit exhales. You begin to feel lighter, more grounded, more free. You're no longer just surviving relationships, you're being seen in them. You're being honored, not tolerated, valued, not used. So if you're feeling the urge to cut ties with what no longer feels safe, no longer feels honest, or no longer feels like love, listen. That urge is your soul protecting itself. It's your inner wisdom guiding you back home. Don't silence it. Don't delay it. This is your liberation, and every time you choose peace over chaos, truth over comfort, alignment over obligation, you rise. When you begin choosing peace over pressure and clarity over confusion, something sacred unfolds. Your frequency begins to shift. What once resonated with you, the noise, the chaos, the constant proving, starts to dissolve. And in its place rises stillness, spaciousness, a calm you haven't known in years. You're no longer vibrating with survival. You're aligning with truth, and that shift doesn't just change how you feel. It changes what you attract. As this new energy settles in, you may find yourself feeling strangely detached from your past. Not in bitterness, but in neutrality. The people, the stories, even the accomplishments that once defined you start to fade into the background. You're not erasing them. You're simply no longer bound by them. Your identity is no longer rooted in who you were. It's rooted in who you're becoming. And that subtle but profound change opens a new doorway. You may find yourself waking up one day and realizing you no longer relate to the thoughts you used to think. The fears that once controlled you have lost their voice. The dreams that once drove you have evolved into something more aligned. It's like watching your old self walk away with grace, while your truest self steps forward to take their place. You haven't lost yourself. You've found her. The version of you that's been buried under survival expectations and noise. This stage can feel surreal. Like the world you've known is still present, but your soul no longer responds to it the same way. Conversations that once thrilled you now feel empty. Habits that once anchored you now feel restrictive. You start choosing different foods, different words, different ways of resting and moving. This isn't random. It's your body and spirit harmonizing. You're not just thinking differently, you're living differently. And in this quiet revolution, you'll begin to notice something beautiful. The less you force, the more flows. The less you chase, the more finds you. Because when you align with your true self, the universe responds in kind. You attract people who speak your new language. You walk into rooms and feel your presence settle like sunlight. You stop apologizing for needing depth, softness, solitude, or truth. You simply become what you were always meant to be. So if you're feeling disconnected from your former self, your former life, or the roles you once clung to, trust that this is not disintegration. It's elevation. You are not lost. You are being repositioned. You are shedding what no longer reflects your soul's frequency. And what remains is not emptiness, but sacred space, space that only your future can fill. At some point, You stop running from silence. You stop filling every moment with noise, distraction, or urgency. Instead, you begin to crave the stillness, the kind that allows you to hear your own breath, your own thoughts, your own truth. Because in that silence, something remarkable happens. Your inner voice becomes louder than the outer world. And when that voice becomes your compass, life starts aligning in ways that once felt impossible. You begin to move slower, but with greater purpose. You no longer rush into decisions out of fear or urgency. Instead, you pause. You reflect. You trust. What once felt like delay now feels like divine timing. You're not moving backward. You're moving intentionally, and that shift, though subtle, creates ripples. You start to see how much of your past was built on reaction. Now you're choosing creation, consciously, courageously, complete, and this shift begins to influence everything. Your relationships become more authentic because you're no longer showing up as who people want you to be, you're showing up as who you truly are. You speak more honestly, love more deeply, and set boundaries that feel like self-respect, not selfishness. The need to please or perform begins to fall away. You're not chasing connection anymore. You're allowing the right ones to find you. As this alignment deepens, your energy becomes sacred currency. You no longer spend it carelessly. You no longer entertain what drains you just to keep the peace. Instead, you honor your time, your space, your attention. You begin to understand that protecting your energy isn't rude, it's wise. Because when your spirit is clear, your path becomes clear. And when your path is clear, your life becomes a reflection of truth. What's remarkable is that the world begins to respond to this new version of you. Doors you didn't know existed begin to open. Opportunities you never considered begin to arrive. Not because you forced them, but because you became the person who could receive them. You start to realize that everything you were searching for externally was always waiting for you to come home to yourself. So if you've noticed yourself slowing down, simplifying, seeking quiet, and choosing yourself more often, this is not regression. It's recalibration. You're not falling apart. You're falling into alignment. The life you're building now is no longer about survival. It's about expansion. And this time, it's being built on a foundation of clarity, wisdom, and soul-deep truth. With each step deeper into alignment, you begin to recognize the difference between what once fueled you and what now truly feeds your soul. You no longer confuse excitement with fulfillment, temporary highs with lasting peace, approval with love. The noise begins to fall away, and in its place, a quiet clarity rises. The kind that doesn't scream for attention, but simply knows. And from that knowing, a new life begins to take shape. You start listening to your body in ways you never did before. You notice how certain environments tighten your chest, while others make you breathe easier. You pay attention to the fatigue that comes after certain conversations and the calm that arrives after choosing solitude. Your body, your temple, has always been speaking, but now you're finally fluent in its language. And because you're listening, healing becomes a natural consequence of awareness. In this new space, joy begins to return, not as a fleeting emotion, but as a state of being. You find it in the smallest things. The way sunlight filters through your curtains, the way your favorite tea feels warm in your hands, the way your own breath reminds you that you're alive. You don't need fireworks to feel lit from within. You don't need validation to feel enough. You simply are. And that, in itself, is freedom. You begin to release the pressure to arrive, the race to prove yourself, to meet some invisible standard, loses its grip. You understand now that becoming isn't about reaching a final destination. It's about being fully present in the unfolding. The version of you that's meant to emerge isn't waiting at some finish line. She's blooming, moment by moment, in your presence, your choices, your self-honoring acts of courage. And as this grounded joy grows within you, so does your discernment. You stop over-explaining your worth. You stop begging for reciprocity. You stop compromising your truth for temporary comfort. Your standards rise, not out of arrogance, but from love. Love for yourself. Love for your peace. Love for the life you now know is possible when you stop shrinking to fit in places you've outgrown. So, if you've been feeling more drawn to simplicity, to intentionality, to inner peace that doesn't rely on external chaos, honor that. It's not you withdrawing, it's you returning. Returning to your essence, to your center, to the quiet power that's been there all along, patiently waiting for you to remember who you really are. As you continue to rise into this new version of yourself, you begin to realize something profound. You are no longer driven by fear. Fear used to sit in the driver's seat. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of not being enough. But now, those voices are losing power. Not because they disappeared, but because you stopped believing them. You began choosing love instead. Love for your path, your process, your becoming. Fear will still knock sometimes. It may still whisper at night or show up in the quiet before a big decision. But now, instead of reacting, you pause. You breathe. You ask yourself, is this fear true or is it familiar? That single question has the power to unravel decades of self-doubt, because more often than not, fear isn't a warning. It's an echo. And you've learned not to build your future based on echoes of your past. And in that courage, something sacred opens. Freedom. You stop editing yourself to make others comfortable. You stop tiptoeing around your truth. You stop asking for permission to be whole. You no longer live for the applause of the crowd. You live for the quiet peace that comes from integrity. The peace that settles in your chest when your actions finally reflect your soul. The beauty of this kind of freedom is that it brings clarity. You know what's yours and what's not. You recognize when energy is mutual and when it's lopsided. You sense when something is aligned and when it's a distraction. And because of that clarity, you begin to choose differently, not from scarcity, but from sovereignty. You are no longer chasing, you are magnetizing. And what comes to you now reflects who you've become. This doesn't mean life becomes perfect. It means it becomes real. You'll still face challenges, but you'll face them as the version of you who trusts her own strength. You'll still have doubts, but they'll no longer steer your decisions. You'll still feel pain, but you'll no longer abandon yourself in it. Because now, you meet life with open hands and an anchored heart. You are present, awake, empowered. So if you're noticing that fear no longer dictates your choices, if you feel a quiet boldness rising within you, trust that you are entering a new realm of freedom. Not the kind handed to you, the kind you claimed. You have rewritten your story, and now, the world must rise to meet the woman you've become. There is a sacred stillness that follows transformation, not because life suddenly becomes easy, but because you become steady. You've weathered the storms. You've faced your shadows. You've sat in the discomfort most people spend their lives avoiding. And now, what once shook you to your core barely stirs the surface. This isn't numbness. This is strength. This is emotional sovereignty. The ability to feel without falling apart. You may not have noticed it at first. It's not loud, and it doesn't announce itself. It shows up in quiet moments. When you respond with grace instead of reaction. When you choose rest instead of burnout. When you let go of what isn't yours to carry. That's the work speaking. That's the new foundation forming beneath your feet. A foundation that can hold your dreams, your truth, your future. And because you've built from within, you now stand taller, not in ego, but in essence. You're no longer swayed by temporary chaos. You've become the calm in the middle of it, You've learned to protect your peace like a sacred flame, not allowing just anyone or anything to blow it out. And as that peace expands, so does your power, not the kind that controls, but the kind that radiates. This is when the outside world begins to reflect your internal growth. The right people begin to notice your energy, not because you're trying to impress them, but because authenticity has a frequency that can't be faked. Doors start opening that used to stay shut. Conversations deepen, opportunities feel aligned. You're no longer grasping, you're receiving, because you've become the kind of person who can hold what you once prayed for. You may still have moments of doubt. You may still have hard days, but the difference now is that you no longer unravel. You observe, you pause, you return to yourself. That's the gift of inner work. It doesn't prevent pain, but it teaches you how to carry yourself through it. And with each passing day, you grow more confident in your own rhythm, your own wisdom, your own timing. So, if you're feeling a quiet confidence settling in, if you've started recognizing your own growth in the way you respond, the way you care for yourself, the way you protect your peace, know that this is your evolution becoming embodied. You're not waiting to become the person you dream of. You are her now. And your presence is proof. There is something deeply holy about the moment you stop searching and start seeing. When you realize that everything you've been seeking outside of yourself has been quietly growing within you all along. You were never missing anything. You were just buried beneath layers of conditioning, fear, and noise. And now, one by one, those layers are falling away, revealing the truth. You are already whole. This recognition doesn't come like lightning. It arrives gently, in the way your shoulders soften after years of tension, in the way you exhale without needing a reason, in the way you sit with yourself and feel safe, not restless. That peace, that grounded awareness, is the result of all the shedding, all the healing, all the surrendering. It's not the end of the journey. It's the reward of presence. It's the beginning of real embodiment. And now, your life begins to reflect this inner arrival. You move with more clarity, more compassion, more intention. You don't just say yes to everything. You discern. You choose what nourishes your soul, not what pleases others. You let silence speak louder than forced words. You show up without the need to prove, to chase, or to perform. You have nothing to prove because you've finally come home to yourself. This homecoming is not a destination. It's a rhythm, a state of being. You start to create from that place, love from that place, speak from that place. Your creativity deepens. Your relationships deepen. Even your pain becomes sacred because you've learned how to hold it without letting it define you. You're no longer afraid to feel deeply because you know now that emotion is not weakness. It is a gateway to wisdom. And perhaps most powerfully, you begin to share your light, not by force, but by simply being. Others feel it. They may not understand what has changed in you, but they'll feel drawn to your calm, your authenticity, your presence. You've become a lighthouse, not by shouting directions, but by standing in your truth. And that kind of light can't be manufactured. It's forged through fire. And you've walked through yours. So if you feel yourself softening into your truth, choosing peace over performance, depth over distraction, know that this is your becoming. This is the moment where the inner and outer worlds begin to mirror each other. You are no longer just on the path. You are the path, and what flows to you now will be nothing short of divine alignment. You've come so far, not just in distance, but in depth, in courage, in truth. And if you felt every word of this message, if it stirred something ancient and sacred inside you, then know this: it wasn't just for inspiration, it was a remembrance, a mirror, a divine confirmation that everything you've been sensing is real. The shift is happening, not someday, now. The world around you may not fully see it yet, but your energy has changed. Your spirit has recalibrated. You no longer move from reaction, you move from alignment, and in doing so, you've stepped into a new timeline, one where your decisions are no longer driven by fear, but guided by trust. This isn't luck. This isn't coincidence. This is you becoming fully conscious of your power and choosing to walk with it. From this moment forward, life will meet you differently. You'll notice it in small ways at first, a sense of ease where there used to be resistance, unexpected opportunities, moments of deep connection that once felt rare. This is the fruit of inner alignment, and it's only the beginning. Because once you return to yourself, you no longer chase, you attract. You no longer beg, you embody. You no longer search, you've shed so much. Beliefs that confined you, roles that silenced you, relationships that blurred your reflection. And now, what remains is the most honest version of you, raw, radiant, resilient. You're not here to be who the world expects. You're here to be who your soul came to earth to express. And that expression, when fully embraced, becomes your gift to the world. So now, you stand at a threshold. Behind you, the life that molded you. Ahead, the life that's waiting to meet you. Not with pressure, but with purpose. Not with perfection, but with presence. You don't need to know exactly how it will unfold. You only need to know that you are ready to live in your truth, to speak from your center, to lead with your heart. And if you ever doubt, return to this. Your awakening is not a coincidence. It is a divine appointment. Your path is not broken. It is blessed. And you, dear soul, are not just evolving. You are becoming whole. So take this message with you. Let it echo through your decisions, your relationships, your voice. Let it remind you, always, you are the sign you've been waiting for. And your time is now.